Kia ora and welcome to Tarmac. I'm Harry.
And I'm Matthew, and you'll notice a bit of a surprise. That's not Dave, unless my eyes are deceiving me, but it's actually Dave's Brazilian cousin.
That's right, I jumped from behind the cameras so we can both be here to review the new Jeep Compass 4xe.
And as you can see by the way we're dressed, is we're doing something different because this Jeep Compass 4xe is comfortable both in the city or in the country. Anyway, come, let's take a look around this. This Compass right here is actually the second generation model. They first started making them in 2007, and to date the Compass is made in 5 different countries around the globe. So that's Brazil, India, Italy, Mexico, and then a 5th one, but I'll leave that up to you to discern. This one in particular is made in Italy, and there's a bit of an Italian connection underneath the bonnet, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Now, the looks, it has been facelifted, yes, and in particular the big things are the gloss black accents across the front, these LED headlamps, but as you'll notice, this Jeep badge is not just a normal Jeep badge. It's actually gloss black and highlighted in a bit of blue, and for good measure because there is some electrification going on. As Harry said, this is the 4xe rather than the 4xe. Of course, the traditional Jeep styling cue is the 7 Jeep slats going across there, and there's plenty of other Easter eggs to allude to their heritage and history around the car, but again, we'll get to that in a bit. You can see some more gloss black accents down the bottom here and even below there. Now, as you can see around the side, there's some more gloss black accents going on around here, framing the wheels, which on this model are also 19 inches and gloss black finished. Now, the one trim line we get in New Zealand is the Compass 4xe S. So that's the only model you can have, and then obviously add your options on top of that. But a big part of the S is of course the gloss black package, which means you get gloss black mirrors, that black roof as well, so it makes the car look two-tone in nature, and this color is Alpine white, but I'm a big fan of the slate blue and Colorado red as well. But it's worth noting that this is the only complementary color, if you like. Everything else is an optional extra. Now, because this Compass 4xe is, well, it's electric, and that means blue, right? So as you can see there, the Compass badge again framed in the blue, sort of almost electric blue color that the Jeep badge is framed in on the front of the car as well. Taking a step back, and again as part of this S model, you do get some really dark privacy glass there, plenty more gloss black plastic going on around there. And then the neat little party trick at the back of this car is this fuel filler cap here and what goes on underneath. Because of safety reasons, when you do actually press the button to open this fuel filler cap, the car actually has to use sort of a vacuum system, suck away all of the petrol fumes from here, and then open up once it's ready. That's so you don't have any of those lingering petrol fumes around active electricity. So quite intelligent, and not just a fuel filler cap. Close this and I take a step around the back, and you'll see that we have the S logo on there. Of course, this is the Compass 4xe S, the only model we do get in New Zealand. You do also have that blue Jeep badge because of the electrification that goes on under here, and you have the 4xe, and I did it again, I mean 4xe. Jeep makes sure to let you know that that means 4xe, not 4xe. Now, our model doesn't come with a tow bar, but you can have a tow bar, and that means 1,250 kgs of brake towing and 600 kgs of unbrake towing. But do note that if you do have a tow bar, the kicker tailgate function won't work. But ours does have the kicker tailgate function, and if you do swipe your foot underneath, it opens up to around about 438 liters of boot space there, and you can actually drop the seats 60-40 or have your ski hatch as well in the middle. Now, enough with this boot there. There's quite a bit of trickery going on underneath in the electrification side, so let's take a look around that side. Now, as you can see here, there is place for charging, and what's under here is actually an 11.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, that gives you 44 kilowatts of pure electric power. And all the electrification stuff goes on at the back here. So you've got the battery underneath the seats, you've got the electric motor in the back, and that means that on pure EV only drive, it's only the rear wheels that are actually moving the car. There is no prop shaft connecting you to the front, but Harry will talk about that in a moment. Now this battery pack gives you 50 kilometers of pure electric range, and helps with the fact that combined these two give you 2 liters per 100 kilometers. In terms of charging, well, you don't have fast charging, it's trickle charging only, but with the amount of range it gives you, again, 50 kilometers is plenty for most people's daily commute. And when you do need to go that extra mile, you have that petrol engine in the front. So let's go take a look at that.
So underneath the bonnet of the Compass, we have the Multi-Air, which is a 1.3 turbocharged 4-cylinder that is good for 132 kilowatts of power and 270 newton meters of torque. It is mated to an automatic transmission that has 6 speeds, and it is pretty much a supply chain galore in here. You can find parts from different brands coming all the way from different countries, and it is pretty much putting all of this together to power the front wheels of the car. Because as Matt said, everything that happens in the rear, it's only the responsibility of the electric powertrain. This engine is very familiar to me because it powers heaps of cars that come from my home country, Brazil. But talking about familiarity, something that would be way more familiar to you guys that are watching our videos is Matthew, and he is on the interior, where we are going to go next to talk about the Compass.
Now, on the inside of this Jeep Compass 4xe, there's a bit of familiarity, as Harry said, mixed with some newness, because of course this is firstly the 4xe and also the facelift model of this second generation Compass. Now, I'll start off with the seats because they are trimmed in a soft Napa leather, and both the driver and passenger at the front have heated and ventilated seats, and you also get a leather trimmed steering wheel which is also heated, perfect for a cold day like today, which I don't know if you can see my hands, but all the blood has disappeared from them. Speaking of leather, you get a little bit of leather trim on the dash up here as well, some nice soft touch materials there, and worth noting that this stitching color is actually called diesel gray. So I like how Jeep have moved into the future while also staying connected to their off-roading roots in that sense. Now, the mixture of materials, you've got some soft touch stuff up there, same thing with the doors at the top, obviously that leatherette trim material there, the stitching, and you've got a nice sort of shiny plastic panel over there just to break up that top and bottom. And of course underneath, a bit of scratchy plastics, but it's only the Compass, so that is to be expected. Now, looking down the middle, you have space for the wireless phone charger there, and of course 2 USB charging ports. You get one C and one A, and then of course, just look at this. It's familiar. It's buttons for the air conditioning control, something that you don't see all too often anymore, but Jeep have gone wild with putting everything on here. But there is secondary controls up the top there as well, but I'll get to that infotainment screen in a moment. Down the middle here, you of course have your gear stick, your electronic park brake, and then this key button here, which is Jeep's select terrain system, and gives you 4 different modes, which is sand and mud, snow, auto, and of course sport. Now, below that you do get some of the more proper 4-wheel drive oriented buttons. So you do get your low range, you can select that simply by a button. You get your hill descent control there, and you get your 4-wheel drive lock. So even though it is electric, and even though it is an urban SUV, I guess more so, it's still extremely true to Jeep's off-roading roots in that sense. 2 cup holders down the middle, including a little slot for your phone, and well, that's enough of that really. I think it's time we take a look at that Uconnect infotainment screen. Now, this screen up the top here is Jeep's Uconnect 5. In particular, this is 10.1 inches, and as you can see there, that's the home layout. In terms of connectivity, you have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and of course Bluetooth as well. And then if I flick through the different menus, you have of course your media inputs. Click on that, and this actually is digital controls for your air conditioning, and as you can see there, your seat heating, ventilation, and of course your steering wheel heater. You have a navigation system built in, and of course click on that icon there of a compass and you're presented with this screen. Now there's e-hybrid, there's controls, which gives you access to that 360-degree surround camera, and then of course various different settings to do with the car. But what we're really interested in here is the e-hybrid menu. So if I click on this additional e-hybrid icon there, I'm presented with many different types of modes relating to that hybrid system. So this first one, in terms of power flow, you've got the engine over there, you can see battery in between, and the electric motor at the back. It also tells you how much the engine is using or putting out in terms of kilowatts, how much the battery is putting out, and the climate consumption. So there is plenty of information there. And click on driving history and it shows you how you've been driving in terms of using both the battery and the engine. And then click on schedule there and you can actually preset the charge times and sort of precondition the car in a way, which is quite intelligent, of course, just like the e-save menu. Now e-save means there are two different sort of things you can do mainly with the battery. Battery save, it reclaims energy from the braking and coasting, whereas battery charge uses the engine to charge the battery. Now below this touchscreen you do actually have buttons here to engage the charging of the battery, as well as the safety systems. You can just turn them off with the touch, or two touches rather, of a button, as you can see on there. Anyway, enough with this infotainment screen there. It's time to take a look at another thing that's new with this compass. So let's head over at the instrument cluster. Now in front of the driver is a 10.25-inch Jeep premium instrument cluster, and this is the first time it's been applied on a Jeep model, so quite revolutionary there from the Compass 4xe. Now the screen in front of you, as you can see, has a lot of information, so I'll break it down piece by piece. So if we look at the right side, you have three different distance figures on there. So the range for the battery, the total range, and then the petrol only range. And at the top you have a battery charge level indicator, and at the very bottom a fuel level indicator. Now if I jump over to the left side, you'll actually see a little blue icon with an engine on it and a little green icon with a battery on it. Now those are representing the power and charge levels, and as you drive along, whether you brake or accelerate or coast, you'll see those fluctuate accordingly to what the car is doing. Now the temperature gauge is down the bottom, and just above that you can see it says hybrid. There are three different modes, of course. You can have hybrid, you can have electric only, or you can have e-save, and then as you saw earlier, two different variations of that to charge the battery with the engine or charge the battery with just coasting and braking. Now the central screen, as you can see there, has got the rev counter and the speed, but you can change the view there with this sort of futuristic Iron Man type look over here, where you can look at the speed sign to be dominating, the range to be dominating, your fuel efficiency, or you can just have your audio input as well. So there is plenty of customization available on that central screen. Similarly, by pressing the various up and down buttons, you can go through and see the different information points of your Jeep. Now I bring it back to this screen because, as you saw earlier, I covered that Jeep Select Terrain system, and if I just flick through that, you can see that it changes in the middle there. Now my compass is sitting on a checkered flag, and then if I go to snow, there we go, it's snowing, and then push up again and I get sand and mud, and as you can see, the little sort of coloring at the bottom also changes, and then like in this scenario, the car will turn on four-wheel drive lock, as well as show the graphic that the traction control is now off. So it does know what to do in all of these preset modes, so it's very intelligent from that sense. Right, enough with the interior and all the tech bits. There's so much of trickery that goes on underneath between that petrol engine and that electric power unit, and I think what's right now is for us to leave the city behind, get Harry back in the passenger seat, and go and explore some of the wilderness and ruggedness side of this Compass. So let's go do that. Okay, so now you join us on the inside of the new Jeep Compass 4xe, and I've got Harry here instead of Dave, and it's nice to have a fellow car nerd along, especially for something as sophisticated as this Compass. So Harry, first impressions?
Yeah, first impressions are really good. We are pretty much using it in hybrid mode right now, but I am yet to see the multi-air engine, very familiar to me, come into life, because it's been doing the majority of its tasks in pure EV mode, which is awesome, doing 80 about to cross the bridge, and the EV power is handling pretty much all the moving.
That's right, we are actually slowly depleting the battery, so I'll expect that multi-air to kick in and then start, using that e-charge function as we showed earlier. Now, the key thing, obviously, this is a family SUV, so before we get into the actual architecture of it, we'll talk about the basics. So, visibility, as you can see there, really good, big windows all around. I haven't had any trouble with the mirrors.
Yeah, it's visibility is actually very good. You raise a good point, because mirrors are quite big. The sitting position is quite tall and elevated, as you would expect from an SUV of this size, and it really helps in making this a great urban crawler.
Absolutely. I did find it a little bit, I say strange, the pedals and the plastic sort of area above it, where if you have larger feet like we do, your feet can get caught up in moving in between and in the plastic housing around the pedal. So that's just something to note, but again, that could be down to driving position. Now, the big change in terms of telling different stories with this new Compass is in the build quality. So Jeep have really upped their game, because they've decided, right, enough's enough, we're going to take on the Germans, the Koreans, and really go head first into it. So how does it feel to be inside? Does it feel like a luxury SUV?
There is no question that the build quality has taken a big step forward, not only in terms of the technology that is being offered, but also the comfort in the build quality. We were just talking about how the seats are that much better. It was great for me to find a good seating position, and there's a lot of adjustability, even for the lumbar support for the passenger seat, which is not something I'm used to seeing on an SUV in this tier on the market. And then there's also the technology that is being brought in here. I was never a big fan of the last implementation of their technology suite, but this is completely different. The quality of the images that you see in both displays is really good. The responsive speed is also really good, and even as you turn on the car, there is no delay at all for all the functions to become available, which is exactly what you want on a plug-in hybrid EV. You really want to get everything configured and ready to go as soon as you climb inside, and this does not disappoint.
100%. So there's a massive step up using Uconnect 5 now in terms of how quickly the screen loads up, its response time, whereas it was not great before, let's be honest. And they have not just upgraded the speed of all of the software, but also your main screen is actually, I believe, Ultra HD now, while the premium instrument cluster is full HD. So they really have upgraded that sort of interface as well from that side with this new Compass. Now, of course, the big thing is the electrification. The system is quite unique, because you've got the petrol engine powering those front wheels and the electricity entirely powering the rear wheels, which means right now, while I'm in full EV mode, it's just the rear wheels that are driving me altogether, and the front wheels are doing nothing apart from steering and braking when I need it. We are in hybrid mode right now and auto, so this is the car's perfect world scenario where it gets to decide how we drive essentially. But if we feel a little bit more like taking over some autonomy, you can switch modes, and for example, Sport will instantly engage the engine, and as will the sort of off-road modes, because of course you need the engine and the battery to be active for any four-wheel driving, because there's no drive shaft in between. They are not connected by any sort of physical, part, but they are connected by software. So it's really interesting what Jeep have done, and I think that's something at some point we'll really want to test out, is how it does off-road when those two systems have to work together.
Yeah, I can imagine that it must be very hard to calibrate both systems to make sure that they talk in a seamless manner to one another, because when you have the powertrain at the front with the turbocharger and an automatic transmission that has to be at a certain position to work the way that it is supposed to, versus the electric one that can give you instant torque, it must be a struggle to make sure that everything talks smoothly, but it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of having something that is very silent to go use around town versus having the ability to go off-road with the four-wheel drive. So it's an excellent say format for people looking for a very versatile vehicle.
And I mean, it has a 6-speed automatic Aisin gearbox actually, but so far I haven't really been able to feel any of the shifts, and I haven't really been able to feel, well, that's because we've been driving in electric mode, but even earlier when we did do some hybrid driving, they're not that pronounced, and the gearbox is actually quite smooth, and I think probably the right choice for the task.
We're about to run out of EV only range, and we are not making an effort to only use up the EV range. It's just how capable the hybrid powertrain actually is to make sure that we are almost at the speed limit on the motorway, and it's just the rear powertrain that is handling all the moving. So maybe if we flick it around to the e-save mode,
and there we go. There's the engine kicking in.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite smooth. It's brought it right up to nearly 2,000 RPM. And if I put my foot down, it does take a bit of time to engage a drop in gear, but there we go. We've got some power now and we're moving. In terms of ride comfort, now I did see some reviews which said the ride was a little bit harsh, but I think we have been through the city, through some speed humps, potholes, and so far the cabin is really quiet and suspension has soaked up everything. I think Harry would probably agree with that.
Yeah, I can
too.
Absolutely agree. Of course, I'm a little bit distant from the majority of the feedback because I'm on the passenger seat, but it's a very comfortable and cruiser. It's very quiet. I don't see a lot of noise coming into the vehicle, even with the bigger rims. And from the passenger seat, I'm very comfortable.
And I have to say another thing is, speaking of Jeep, well, this car of course comes with the Easter eggs like any other Jeep, and there are quite a few around that we did spot, and some unfortunately that we don't get in this New Zealand market, which the American ones have in Morse code. So nice one to Harry's fiance for picking that one up. Well, I'll pick up on the safety. So this car comes really upgraded with lots of different safety systems, one of which is the lane keep assist system. A little bit intrusive, so you might want to turn it off, especially if you're an owner of the car. But again, Jeep makes that really easy for you by just double touching one of the buttons near the infotainment screen. The other key thing is that it does actually have a new function, which is drowsy driver detection, I think is what Jeep calls it, where if you're nodding off, it'll wake you up essentially. Now, we will also talk about the efficiency. So the car itself, when you're using both petrol and electric motors, gives 2 liters per 100 Ks in terms of fuel efficiency. And, well, the carbon emissions, Harry, do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, so the combined figures for when you're driving the car in hybrid mode sit around 49 grams of CO2 per kilometer, which is a very good figure and expected for a vehicle of this sort. And I'm just starting to realize that now that we are driving it in e-save mode, we are actually charging the battery as we drive. So this is again a very interesting use case for people that want to have the car ready for their journey the next day. So be it if you want to schedule the cabin to be in a right temperature for when you start off your day the next day, or you want to start your journey the next day in EV only mode. If you finish your journey the day before with a motorway piece of driving like what we are doing right now, you can get to your driveway at the end of the day with some juice left in the battery. So this to me feels like the perfect scenario for people that use the car on a daily EV journey and still want to have a little bit more flexibility to handle a road trip in the weekend.
Correct. And combining the two powertrains, it gives you a 0 to 100 time of around about 7.1 seconds, so it's not too sluggish. of the Mach-E though. So there you have it, the new Jeep Compass 4xe S. It's the only Compass 4xe that we get in New Zealand, but feature loaded. I mean, the build quality is a big step up from before with the Compass, and they've done a really good job, I think, with merging that petrol and electric powertrains together to make for a relatively smooth drive. What do you think?
I completely agree. It is a massive step up from the Compass that I used to know in pretty much all fronts. And you also get the capability of having both a urban Explorer like this and a little bit of capacity with the off-road.
Absolutely. So it's still a Jeep even though it's electrified, and that's the most important thing there. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe as always, and we'll look forward to seeing you on more Tarmac Life videos. See ya.
Thank you.